Hello everyone, so welcome to another video. Um, so today I got a new webcam, but I tried to set it up. It's installed and it's selected on YouTube Studio, but still not working. I don't know what's going on. I'm not great with tech. So today video, as you've seen on the description, is going to be, we will be talking a little bit about piston to valve clearance and dyno reads, which is something I spoke about it before briefly, but I still see things that it's not really what it's supposed to be. So, you guys ready for it? We're only two today, so everyone's still asleep. Wakey, wakey. I genuinely fell asleep just before starting this video. I woke up like 15 minutes ago. That's why I look like this. Audio is quite bad. Oh, that's no good. That might be my internet. That might be the internet. Let me see. I cannot even see. My internet at home is appalling. And on the workshop, there's no place to have internet. There's no internet connection in there. Right. So anyway, can you guys hear me well at least? Do I have to talk any louder? Is it okay, the sound? Like, hello? Yeah, hello? Okay, I want to start and I want you guys to understand what I'm talking about. So anyway, I will start. No one is saying anything, so it should be fine. Loud and clear, beautiful. Okay, so starting by the distance clearance. It's funny this, like I don't know what subjects to bring up sometimes, and the last few videos, the subject I'm bringing is things that I see that people are not doing right, so I decide to bring it up. So now, piston to valve clearance, it's very important to check when you're fitting aftermarket cams, when you have like different pistons, to make sure everything like the piston doesn't touch the valve. So there's ways that the manufacturer tells you to fit the cams, and the thing is, an aftermarket cam, for example, you have more lift TDC, which means like when the piston is at top dead center, the valves are going to have more opening than on the standard cams. So this is because they will have more overlap. So when the piston is at TDC, both valves are open to help with scavenging and stuff like that. So now the thing is, like most things that most cam manufacturers, they tell you like what's the minimum piston to valve clearance, and this is like most of the ones I've seen so far, they say a TDC 2 mil. Okay. So audio is bad. Okay. I don't know. There's not much I can do, unfortunately. So at when the piston is at TDC, they say the minimum like space you have it's 2 mil. And now what you think about is like, why is it 2 mil that we need to have piston to valve clearance? Why cannot it just a mil? Well, there's a few reasons for that, and I'm not going to talk about everything in detail. I'm just going to give you guys an idea of what happens. So as you guys know, when the engine is rotating, everything is moving, and the pistons come close to the valves. Not the closest point to the valve is not a TDC. So there's a place where the piston, when it comes up, it gets closer to the valve than a TDC. And for example, on the exhaust, it's going to be around 10 degrees before top dead center. Okay, so if you look at it, you can try to visualize it. So the piston is going up, and the exhaust valve is still closing. So it comes to a point that the piston, the valve still has quite some lift before the piston comes up, and it is around 10 degrees before top dead center. So in here, it's where you can also measure your clearance. But to make things easier to measure both, that's why they give you like 2 mil at TDC. Now, the thing is, depending on the cam ramp and profile, you might want to do it with 10 degrees before top dead center. So if the ramp of the cam is a very aggressive ramp, I would advise you to do that. Or you can check both ways. Other way you can do it as well is you put, I forgot the name of the thing. Clay, is it clay? God, forgot the name. It's plasticine. It has another name, I think. Anyway, on top of the piston, and rotate the engine, and then when it's rotated and done the full, I call it the full cycle, you can take the head off, cut the clay in half, and then measure the height of the clay. That will give you the piston to valve clearance you have. Now, what happens if you don't do this? Well, you see, the thing is, it comes down to something that is what happens. It's not funny at all. It's expensive when it goes wrong. It's you might have a very light contact with the valves and the piston, and the thing is, sometimes you turn it by hand and you don't feel it. You know, if it's too bad, if it's really bad, like it's really touching, you will start turning it and it will lock on the valves. The piston will go against the valves and it will not turn anymore. But if it's done and you didn't measure, like there are points which happened to me before. You turn it by hand, you don't feel anything, but you still don't have enough piston to valve clearance. And what happens is you start the engine and then you hear a noise. It sounds like a diesel because the valves are going to be hitting the piston. So if it's doing that, you know what you have to do. But the thing to avoid all of that is just to really measure it, you know. So the thing is, how do you measure it, the piston to valve clearance? The best way to measure it is like I shouldn't start it like this. Like you first have to see what type of valve train you have, okay? And then if you have hydraulic lifters, you need to put check springs to measure the clearance, okay? And why is that? You need to have a soft spring, so when you apply pressure to the valve, it's not bleeding the hydraulic part of the valve train. Because if it has a normal spring, when you apply the first part of the pressure, it's actually compressing the lifter itself. So you're not actually measuring the piston to valve clearance. You are actually compressing the lifter. And this has happened to me a few years ago when I went to measure the clearance, and I was like, "There's plenty of clearance." Started the engine, and it was just tapping, which is the name you give to it. Then I just had a bright idea. I said, "Wow, I completely forgot this is hydraulic lifter. So when I apply pressure, it just bleeds the lifter itself, and this is why." Now, it's sometimes when there's seemingly a video on the M42 and 44 page with 6 and the noise engine. Yeah, exactly that. And this is why I'm doing this video today, Gary. It's because I've seen that. So that's the noise. Now the thing is, if it also can happen that it's not enough for you to hear it at idle, but then when you start revving, you start making it. And this is where it becomes really dangerous, because if it's only start to happen when you're revving it, it means it's only hitting the valves at high RPM, and at high RPM, a piston touching a valve is perfect for an engine failure. So because they break the valves, the vibration itself, the valves start shaking and then they just drop the heads. So that's it. This is what's going to lead to. So check springs if you have hydraulic lifters. Measure the piston to valve clearance. Like always, I would suggest if you fit a performance cam, you have different pistons. Don't take chances. If you skim the head, don't take chances because it can be expensive. And then the other thing is the car doesn't make power at all when the pistons are just in the valves. It's just the engine doesn't even want to rev. So this is the thing. It's measure it. If the car has no, it has solid lifters, not hydraulic lifters, you can do it while using the normal springs, but it's so hard to push them down and for you to measure it that you better off putting the check springs. Even if it takes longer to do, it's a process that's worth spending time doing because this can save your engine. So in some engines are very tricky. It's very tricky to measure because to put check springs, it means you have to take the cylinder head off. But it's what it is. To me, there's no point on trying to save some time because then it's just going to end up on an engine failure. That is all. So this is a quick thing about the piston to valve clearance. As I said to you guys, the point that is going to be the closest, it's around 10 degrees before top dead center. Of course, to measure this, you will need to have a degree wheel. Okay, so this is not the type of job that is for a normal person to do. Okay, it has to be someone already with experience and that understands how things are done. Do you have to account for the external expansion in the 2 mil? This is already to give enough room for the thermal expansion that is going to happen. Okay, so this is why you leave 2 mil. You don't need to, otherwise it could be 0 mil. It will not touch. But because of the expansion, this is why you have to leave the 2 mil in. So measure it. Now, around 10 degrees before the top dead center for exhaust, and if you measure it in there, like you will see like how close it actually gets. It gets closer, and when you have 2 mil at TDC, it's going to be closer around that degree. Now, the other thing is, this is also going to depend on your con rod ratio, but this is why I don't want to go too deep into this, because then this gets really complicated, really. And on the intake, 10 degrees after TDC. So exactly, rod stretch at high RPM. Yeah, this is why there's the 2 mil in there, because everything just starts growing. It's not normal because there's a weight, and you multiply it by the piston speed, then you see how much weight that piston is going to have at 8,000 RPM. So the rod is normal for it to stretch. The rod bolt, everything stretches at high RPM. So this is the thing: is guys, always measure it. And if you're not sure about what you're doing, you shouldn't be doing it. This is the start. Now, the subject I'm going to do today is something that me and my good friend Gary speak a lot, because we see a lot of things that actually make me laugh. Dyno figures. Right. There is a big problem on people reading dyno figures. I'm not even going to go like you should look at the torque line, and no, it's I've seen when was it? Yesterday, I believe. Yeah, I seen a video of someone that tuned a car, and at the end he puts the figures on the car, and it was something like 230 HP. This is a 2-liter engine, so 2.0 engine. And then it claimed 190 foot-pounds. Okay, 190 foot-pounds. It is, I'm going to put in NMs, 256 NMs. And then it's in foot-pounds. 19. You got 95 foot-pounds per liter. And amps is 128 amps per liter. I know I'm writing all this, but I don't want to stand up and start talking about this. It's just so I have the values in there. Now, this, I looked at it and I'm like, wow, this is not right. Now, the thing about it, why it's not right, well, I've seen the mods the engine has, and 128 Nm per liter or 95 foot-pounds per liter, it's pretty much unachievable on an engine how do I put it? You need to have, it's not even you need to have, let's put this way, the engine that always made the most power and torque per liter were always the Formula One engines. And you never seen them going over the 90 foot-pounds per liter. So it's it's like it's a bit unrealistic to say that it's going to have that torque per liter. What creates the torque is the volumetric efficiency of the engine, and at this point, you're saying that your volumetric efficiency is extremely high, and like I'm not saying it's not possible. It's not possible to do on pump fuel, full stop. Especially on an engine that it's not really tuned enough to produce these numbers. Now, the thing is, you can look at it and say, well, it's unrealistic. And when I work the math and I calculated the torque is around 5% off. Okay, because 180 foot-pounds, yeah, you can do it on a 2 liter, is a very strong torque figure for a 2 liter. 190, it's it's not. I don't think it's something that can be achieved. Now the thing is, the funny thing with torque and the dynos is there's things you have to look at. You have to look at the dyno graph itself and look at the power versus the RPM and the torque. So you have to look at the plot and see if actually the RPM is shown right. And why is this important? Well, if the RPM is not shown right, because I'll give you the example from my dyno, and I've seen quite a few other dynos that are the same. The dyno means reads the horsepower, okay? And when the dyno reads the horsepower, it just knows the speed, and it knows how long the car took to accelerate from the, let's say, 2000 to 8000 RPM. Now, it knows it has done it, but it's not seeing it's never usually not seeing the RPM the engine is doing. So it's down to the dyno operator, to us, to insert the ratio. So it shows the right RPM. Because what will happen is, I showed you guys on another video before how to calculate the power and the torque. Is, for example, the dyno says the car has 200 okay? Now, on 200 bhp, then it says it has, let's put it, 200 Nm of torque. Okay? And then if you this is what the engine has. You don't calibrate it right, and you can have the same 200 bhp with 300 Nm of torque. And it's like, how? Okay. So, as I said, it calculates how long it takes to accelerate from one RPM to the other. But if you don't give it where it starts, where it ends, it never knows what's going on. It assumes it's a 1-to-1 ratio, and that might lead to the wrong reading. So now, how does this happen? Is you guys know how a torque line is like this, goes up and then starts falling down. Not really as rapid as it. Oh my god! I've written with a permanent marker. Wow, amazing! Which one made it a permanent mark? Many pens in here. This is my daughter started bringing the wrong pens. So, well, how do I do this now? Well, let's extend it like this. Anyway, this looks really bad now. We got a line that doesn't come out. So, torque line, like this, and then the power goes like that. So, we can start here. This is the torque or power, and then RPM. Okay. So it will tell you, it will measure the time and say it took this many seconds. You need this certain amount of power to achieve that. But then from here to here, from start to end, it doesn't know what RPM the engine is. If the engine starts from 1 to 4,000 RPM, and it does those, let's say, 200 bhp, and then you have one that goes from 1 to 8, and it does 200 bhp. The torque numbers are going to be completely different, because to get, let's say, 200 bhp at 4,000, you need, so, so 200 bhp at 4,000, it makes, so it's, $200. Sorry guys, I'm still waking up. My God. So you got to divide 200 by 50. Oh, come on. Cannot even work with my calculator today. Okay, so that's it. It's equals 260. So, and this 262 pounds. Okay, so you're going to have 200 HP, but 262 pounds. But to 8,000, it's a completely different story. So at 8,000, now you have 131 foot-pounds. 8, and this one 4. You see, so what I mean is, if it's not input right, you see the difference it makes. It goes from 262 to 131. We make the same power, but the torque number is completely different. So I don't like to go and look at the torque at the dyno graph. If it doesn't have the RPM, I don't like to judge it, because if it's badly calibrated, you can end up with this. So when you see the difference in torque we have, it's huge. So this is because the ratio is not right. So let's say the first one, the ratio is wrong, and second one, the ratio is right. So we'll have, there's a very big difference in value, and this can tell you, for example, ratio it has. Just have to divide one number by the other. So the ratio it would be 1.24. See, that would be your corrected ratio, and then you will have the right power not power, the right torque values. Now, not all rolling roads work like this. And like some rolling roads are really, they give really high figures. So the thing is, what I like to say is, if you see a result that the car has over 110 nm per liter, to make 110 nm per liter, it needs to have some degree of tune already done to it. Good compression, like with variable valve timing, it's easier to achieve. But like on older engines, it's not really an easy thing to do. So if it's a full race engine, yeah, it can go up to, as I said, 120 nm per liter. But on an engine that someone just said, I just fitted some cams and an exhaust and tune it, and it's like this. Doubt it. It's not really something that can happen that easily. But as I said, if it's a variable valve timing engine, like the new engines we have, like the new BMW with double vinyls and stuff like that, but the newer stuff, it can be made, but it has to be really well tuned. And like some of you might know, some others don't, I'm really chasing torque numbers, and I'm working quite a lot on the port speed and things like that nowadays. So I can get the torque I really want. And the engine has everything to make the torque, but it still needs more. It needs to be moving the air at a different RPM to get even more torque out of it. And I know how hard it is to get some decent torque numbers because I've been really focusing on it. So when someone comes and tell me just bolted the cam and all of a sudden it's making magic torque numbers, it's not really something that happens. So this is it. As I said, if the plot is right, if you have the thing that you can see the full um, start to finish RPM, not speed, because speed doesn't tell you RPM. And then if you try to work it, you can. The thing is, I've done it before where I reversed a dyno printout. I knew where the peak power was, so I've seen how much torque it makes on that thing, and I've seen how much torque it was putting on the plot, and I found it was the ratio was wrong, was a 1.6, and the dyno operator didn't even touch it. This happens a lot in Australia, where people don't really look at the torque curves. They just look at the power curves. It's not really the way I like to see things myself, but you see most of them, they just show the power curve. That's it. It's not that doesn't show how the torque itself, how good the engine is on keeping the torque. Of course, if you want to calculate it, you can, but then I will have to go through the entire line and try to get the values of that certain area and then put it on a piece of paper and do a line myself to see how it is. And it's not something that I fancy doing. The dynos can read both, so let's make the full use of the fact that they can do it. So that's the thing. It's start analyzing it this way. Look at it properly, and when you see torque numbers that are really high, look firstly at the dyno plot, the RPM, see if it's there. If it isn't there, it's very hard to judge it if it's right or wrong. So that's the thing. The other thing is you shouldn't ever look at the dyno and take it as an absolute. Like as I said again on another video, is I like to use my dyno to start and finish, like where I started and where I finished, and see the gain in percent. So it's one of those things. We want to read the gain we made, in order to understand what we have done. Not really see, oh, let's see how much power it's making now. You don't know where you start in first place. So what's the point of dynoing it then and see what it's making? It's not really, doesn't really work that well. It's not, doesn't do any favors to it, doesn't benefit from anything. So that is the thing, is from it starts to it ends. And then I've seen something that really annoy me because of the way I like the numbers and the way I work the numbers all the time. When someone just goes and puts a really bold claim and everyone was like, wow, look at that, how amazing, it's really good, wow, it's crazy. As the people were to just try to think a little bit how much of engine work is required to get some numbers, it's but I cannot guide everyone the way the people want to see the things. They see the things their own way. It's whatever I say, it only comes from the experience I have. And I might be doing something wrong not to get the torque they do, but I rather believe I'm doing the things right because we still have good results. And as you guys have seen, for example, on our little 116, the acceleration on that car, it's quite stunning for a car with so little power. People told me my dyno is underrating because of how quick that car is. I don't think it is. I think it's realistic. So the problem I have is most dynos overread, and then that's why when my one seemed that I calculate my dyno was proper calibrate. I spent some decent time calibrating it. I'm not saying it's perfect. It might not be, but it so far with me it has worked really well. It shows what it is, and our little BHP cars usually are very quick. So I think it's just what the power should feel like. Anyway, so it's just you guys have the freedom to do whatever, to interpret it, to understand the things the way you want to understand it. So I understand it one way, you guys can understand the others, but generally take some of the reads with a pinch of salt. And as I said, it's the best thing right now. How much read on the dyno? My 116 at the moment is not even 180 bhp, is 178, something like that. I'm still on the standard intake. The 1 hour intake, when I tested it, was actually made for a customer, so I don't run it on my car. It's fitted on the customer car, but it's not even look, it's very close to 180 bhp, but it's what it is. And like when I've done the acceleration test, it's 1 second slower than a 130i. I compared it with the 130i because it's a 1 series as well. Then I also went to compare it against other hot hatches that have more power than what I do. And not only that, they are lighter and they are front-wheel drive. And why is important to mention that? Because front-wheel drive will have more power at wheels. And this is something I said to someone yesterday. I said, you see, the front-wheel drive, even with more power at wheels, wasn't any quick. And this one, I'm talking about the Clio, the RS Mark III. So the 197 they called. So stock, I do the same quarter mile. And when I've done my test, you guys can see the video, I couldn't launch the car in first gear. It was just wheel spinning in first. I went to second carefully and started accelerating from second. So I know there's another half a second to come out of it, but it doesn't bother me. Still 15.5, I think, or 15.43 is a very decent time. It's comparable to a lot of hot hatches. And now the Clio is still lighter by 150 kilos than the 1 series, and I still did the same time. So it's one of those. It's the average torque the car has. I understand why people say my dyno is not reading the right power because of what the car does. To me, it's right. I worked all the volumetric efficiency of the engine, and it comes down to around what the car is doing. Okay, that can have variations because of air temperature and density and stuff like that. It might vary a little bit, but it's within what it should do. The thing is, it's very torquey. It has a lot of average torque. My average torque is higher than, for example, the EP3 is 250 kilos lighter than the 1 series. And it's only 0.3 seconds fast on the quarter mile. Why? Because it has no torque. The peak torque of the Civic Type R standard, the EP3, is lower than my average torque on the 116 with a 1.9 engine. So this is why the car accelerates so much faster, because it's not much faster. For the power it has, accelerates faster, because if the Civic had my weight, it wouldn't be as fast. My dyno is a wee bit low reading in my books. I rather be like that, you know, so it's fast VHP. I had also the 997. I had someone that I took out for a drive. He has a E90 M3 V8. And he said to me, he asked, how much power does this car have? And I said, on my dyno, it's 345 HP. And he's like, right, because this feels as fast as my E90 M3. Well, I don't know. It's what my dyno says to me. I'll believe in it. It's, you know, it just seems to be the right thing for me. But as I said, because I always start with a delta, you know, I want to see the gains. But then, of course, on our engines, I know where we started and I know where we are. That's the thing, you know. So you guys really, dynos, start looking at it on a differently, you know. But keep the knowledge to yourselves, keep the things to yourself. When it's really far off, I cannot contain myself not to comment on things like I've seen this morning. Someone saying his 3.8 was 500 NMs at the wheels. And I was like, wow, 500 NM at the wheels. That is amazing. It will never do that. To do that on a petrol car, you really, it's well, you have to do a lot. Setup and drive also gives HP. Yes, but we're talking in straight line performance, really, you know, like straight line, what do I do? Nothing different from the others, change gear. And like the times I'm comparing with, for example, on my case, is with things that were done by proper test drivers and on ideal conditions. And when I done the video on my car, I was very far from ideal conditions. It was raining, the road was very bumpy. If you look, all of that matters. And now the thing is, the car is no longer on 16-inch wheels, it's on 17s, and they look nice, but they are very heavy. So I feel the car doesn't accelerate as fast. You know, I can feel it. It's like, especially on the taller gears, you feel it. But it doesn't bother me, you know. I'm not going to just change the wheels to do and wait for a day to come dry to do like a high 14s, for example. It doesn't bother me. I'm happy with the car as it is. It does on perfect conditions. It's compared to a stock one, it's close to 3 seconds faster. So my car still is a 116. It has a 116 engine that we tuned. So that's the thing. It's doing quite well. I remember you spending ages to getting your dyno calibrate where you were happy. Yeah, but you know the thing, Gary, you said to me about above that my dyno is a wee bit low reading in your hooks. It's a very good friend of mine. He spends a lot of time with me on the workshop, and he says, I think your dyno is accurate as it is. I don't know why you want to make it even lower than what it is. And I said, it's not about being lower, it's about being realistic. And I don't want to have a car that gives me the hope it's going to be fast, and I drive it and it's not fast. And often what happens, it's the opposite. Is I drive a car that I just tuned on the dyno and the car is rapid, you know. But I generally think the dyno is accurate. It's just what it is. It's not, to me, it's not reading low, it's just what it should be. So, you know, is one of those things. I think a lot about the numbers, and I like when things add up. So then if the things don't add up, I see it's reading a bit too. I'm going to inspect and see there's something has to be wrong. It cannot be right. That's the thing. Now, someone on the comments. Now this is already a different subject. So this is it, guys. Look at the power and torque this way. Okay, look at what RPM it's showing on the dyno. If it's only showing speed, don't even bother, because you cannot really work it out unless you want to do what I can do. So reverse all the calculations, and then you will know where it is. Now my board looks great. This is a great idea. And now we're going to go to educate people not to believe all those call me happy rolling roads. Now, I think the other thing is most people want the the printouts as a how do I call it bragging right. Oh, look at what my car does. It's not really the way I see things. I don't brag about our performance. I would only brag about something if it really impressed me. And as I said before, I haven't done anything on my engine that impressed me. The only thing that impresses me is how quick they are for the power they have. But you know, it's that's the thing when I compare them to other things. But in terms of numbers, it's not. You know, when I see like the our N44 V19 doing over 250 bhp or 260, then I'll be happy with that. That will impress me. But I know what I have to do to get to it. But it's just I don't know if I'm going to like it. This is the problem. Yep, and they'll defend their results to death. Yeah, but you know, it's just there's, you know, like your experience, Gary. You know, like how to win an argument like that. It's just the best way to do it. It's leave it to them. If they believe it's right, it's right. That's it. Then what happens is they, for example, have an encounter with someone that has less power on another dyno, and their car is slower than the car that has less power, then they will realize actually it might be wrong. So Sigma, you should try to bring your cars to some other independent dyno just out of curiosity. There's no point. You know, I thought of doing that. It's no point. I'm not, how do I put it? I'm doing the things for myself and for the company, for BDS. It's not, I don't need to go elsewhere to see if their dyno is reading right or wrong, because what matters to me is my dyno, what I'm doing. And as I said, I would have to take the car before, like a standard car, and then take it again and see if it's actually reading the same delta as we have, and if it's reading the same power as we have. But again, it doesn't bother me. I will gain nothing out of doing that. So I'm just going to be spending money for nothing. It's just to satisfy whom. It will not satisfy me because I don't need to see what others are going to say. I need to see what my one said before and after. And that's fine. Because the thing is, if it was right when the car was standard, you know, like a standard 116 on my dyno, the power advertised is 115 bhp. I haven't had one that made 115 bhp in there. One. The best read I had was a stock one, was 110 bhp, I think, and 110 foot-pounds of torque as well. Which, like, the torque is what they announced. The power is not quite there, but you know, it's one of those things. It's I know they start there, where my one is, where the others are. It's a different problem. Like I had a car, a race car that I have dynoed a few months ago. I've done some work on it, and it went to be dynoed elsewhere. It had some different cams, exhaust manifold, big bore throttle body, and all sorts. And it was dynoing elsewhere. It dynoed 130 bhp it was making. So I put it on my dyno, and it came out at 116 bhp. It broke the owner's heart, but you know, I said to him, look, it's what it is. It's what it shows in here. I'll try to improve it, and I managed to improve it. So the car left with close to 140 bhp and a lot more torque than what it had previously. So this is the thing. To me, it doesn't matter what other dyno says, what my says. I'm not going to compare my dyno against others. You know, then it makes no sense. My dyno is a working tool for me, so to help me doing my development. So comparing it against other, what is just to say, my dyno reads less or reads more or whatever. Not bothered on that, you know. Is that it's not a real benefit. If I found that would guide me on a better way to do things, yeah, but for that I will have to go to other dyno and do the full work on it, and then repeat the same process on mine and see if it's doing the same. But then I have to get to work with one I have, not with the ones the others have. So that's the thing. It's not it's not really that important. Now I'm going to pick my phone because as I was going to say, I had someone that biggest number I've seen in my dyno. Ooh, that was a heartbreaker for the owner. Because it was tuned M140i with a stage 2. It was supposed to make 450 bhp, and on my dyno it shows 400 bhp. So, well, it was 50 bhp shorter than what it was promised to deliver. But being dead honest with you, I drove the car and didn't feel like the 450 bhp. So that's one of those things. I don't know if the owner is watching. If he is, I'm sure he's going to be crying now because he usually watches my lives as well. Now we got Demo. Are you there, Demo, today? Because he asked me to talk about ECU tuning or compression ratio. We don't have much time left. So I'm not sure if I can start talking about this, because if I start talking about this now, I might extend well over the hour. So I can choose. I'll talk about ECU tuning because this one is not going to take a long time. ECU tuning is very simple. It's not something I can just talk about it in here with no ECU and with no engine to tune. Because there are far too many variants on the ECU tuning, you know. So, and it also depends what ECU you have. If you have a standalone stock ECU, and is it something that you actually have to see what is done and I don't know, see before, after, and to see how the engine behaves when you do something. It's really impossible to do a video without having loads of data behind me to show you what it does, cam timing, and this, because what you're doing with ECU is only changing the parameters of the engine, but in the newer engines, position of the cams, the throttle position, then you will have all of that. But you know, it just, there's so much between them. It's hard for me to just be talking about it. So it's not a subject I can bring this way without having a screen where I can show you like a V table, an ignition table, and explain to you what it does. It's a bit complicated. Then compression ratio. I did spoke about compression ratio in the past, and I said the compression ratio is a bit like boost. So you increasing the cylinder pressure. Do you work with OBD1 E36 stock ECU? If I have to, not that I like to. Usually, all the OBD1 E36s, when I start tuning them, one of the first things I do is standalone ECU, because the ECUs on the early 36s aren't great at all. And because there's so many cheap options like plug and play that work really well, why even bother? You know, like instead of spending time, I can do this. I can spend, let's say, 4 hours on the dyno tuning a ship for an OBD1 ECU, or I can put a standalone on it and spend an hour on it and get the same result. And then the advantage is on the standalone, in the future, you can do any upgrade you want, you get the ECU that will cope with it. On the standard one, you'll always be limited by the factors that you have on the standard ECU. So I always give the choice to the customer, but it's not really budget friendly to do one of those ECUs, because if you're thinking of doing things in the future, and there's other advantages you have on the standalone ECUs as well. It's not it's so much more you can do than on a standard ECU. It's an absolute no-brainer to not get like a plug and play ECU and bolt it on it, and that's it. You know, just have to tune it right and make it work. Now the compression ratio, as I said, it works a bit like boost, but then it goes on the thingies that I explained before. Is like it comes to a point that you actually start having pinging, start having detonation. That's because the excessive cylinder pressure or just too much heat, too much temperature. So you have to start dialing back the ignition timing. So there's a balance between a high compression ratio and ignition, because like it will gain up to a point and then you're not gaining anymore because now you have to retard your ignition, and what you gained with the raising compression you just lost because you had to retard ignition. Now this is on pump fuel. When you have V85, it's perfect. You can put compression ratio wherever you want it, almost. It's just, it's one of those things. You can then run quite a lot of ignition as well, and then it's still safe. So that's the thing is with compression ratio. But because most of us are on pump fuel, we really have to look at it the right way. Because, for example, my 116, it has very high compression ratio, but it doesn't have it very high just because I thought, yeah, let me put it high because I want more power. No. The only reason why I have high compression on my 116 is because in the future, I want to put a very aggressive cam on it. And when you have a very aggressive cam, because you have more overlap, it tends to bleed out the some of the cylinder pressure. So you need to raise the compression to account for that. So this is why the cars that have very aggressive cams, they need to have higher compression ratio. Otherwise, they become really flat below the efficiency of the cam, where the cam starts to really peak and get more the performance out of it. If you don't do that, then it's not, doesn't work really that well. So the good example, for example, on my white car when I had it, when I did the ignition map on it, it's one of the one of the M44s that took the most ignition and still pulls strong, because usually they come to around 26, 27 degrees, they gain nothing from there, they start losing. My one made power up to over 30. So this is because of the cam it had. It didn't start doing any knocking and detonation, so I could push the ignition and the car still made more power. So this is the thing. Compression ratio, as I said, like, is a balance. You have to see what you want, what you have. On a road car, I would say, like, and this is on a mild road car, you don't need more than 11. The thing is, the gain you get from going from 11 to 12 is offset by the ignition. You're going to have to dial back. Unless, of course, like this, I'm told the total ignition advance you have, it has other things that affect it: the combustion chamber design, the cam duration itself, the flow of the head, and of course the piston size, the bore size. So that's the thing. You have to take quite a lot into consideration before you go and say, yeah, I'm going to raise the compression to gain more power. You have to play wisely, play your cards right. Otherwise, you end up with a car that is slower, not slower, but is not going to gain anything. You're just going to feel you've done a step on a direction that didn't exist. So it's just a waste of time. Now, if you are preparing for big cams and stuff, yeah, definitely do it. But on pump fuel, no more than 12 ever. I don't think it works. So this is where I put my limit at with the pump fuel, 12 compression ratio. And the thing is, I only do that on engines that are going to have really aggressive cams. Even still, I don't mind having a little bit less power, so it's safe to use with any fuel. So 11.5, because the gain, like, as I said this before, 0.5 of CR equals around, it's not like it's not exact, 1.5, 2% on power gain. But this gain only occurs if you don't have to take any of the ignition, because if you do this and then you have to retard the ignition by 1-2 degrees, the gain is gone. So this is why you have to play your cards right and to think before you do something like this, because you think, I'm going to use compression ratio, so the car is going to be faster. Well, it might not be, it might be exactly the same. Or you might actually do the thing that you shouldn't, which is you raise the compression and you don't touch the ignition map, or you don't even try to see how much noise the engine is making or following the knock. and then all of a sudden you end up with a bigger problem. That is, all of a sudden you just made a hole on a piston and you don't understand why, how it has happened. Well, probably the compression was too high and you didn't pay any attention to the rest. So that's the thing. You can, it's not, I don't change an engine compression to use the 85. But the thing is, the 85 allows you to run more compression. It's the thing. If you have like, it's like race fuel. If you have race fuel, you can have higher compression. This is why race cars have like 14 and 15 to 1. Some of them have more. If it's a restricted engine, they can go up to 17 of compression ratio, which is absolutely crazy. But yeah, it's like you don't need to change it. It's if you have higher compression, it's great if you're using 85. The other thing is, again, 85 only becomes the benefit if you start having detonation before you reach the maximum efficiency of where the engine is making the best torque. So if it stops gaining torque before it starts detonating, if you put 85, it's very unlikely for you to see gains. So this is the thing. So also other thing that accounts into the ignition timing as well. Exhaust, it's so important, you know, like because the exhaust, it will determine how quick you can empty the combustion chamber, and if it's still some residues inside the engine to empty out, you're going to lose like some volumetric efficiency through that. And then because you have still burnt exhaust gases on the combustion, is the same as lowering your octane rating. So you start really losing a lot of power. That is the thing. So everything has to be done within a reason. So you can do it, you can balance it right, you can, you know, there's a lot of things you can do, but like, and an engine has a lot to offer, but you have to do the things right. So you can often spend time doing the wrong things. So it's up to you to decide what you want to do. If you want to go crazy and then you gain nothing out of it, or if you don't want to go as crazy and you actually see some gains that are not really what you want, but are what you can gain, and it still is a gain. It's better to spend 100 and gain 1 than spend 200 and gain 0. So this is the thing, because if you go the wrong direction, if you start doing the things the wrong way, you're going to end up spending more and gaining less. This is what I mean with this. So that's why it's important to work everything out. So I think that's enough for today's video. So I'll be waiting to see what I can find online during these days in order to bring some content into this and start talking about it. Yeah. On the 85 on a standard M50 will make any more power. Which Chinese you make first? I know why you're asking that. I don't think you need it really. You know, we could try, but the thing is, we have to try it on the dyno and see what it does, and then have a switchable map. So we could run E85 and normal fuel. So, but the thing is, that's E85 is mostly for boosted. On NA, on a standard engine, the gain is not really. I usually don't see any gain. And you have to put bigger injectors. You have to change quite a lot. Fuel system has to be changed to cope with the 85. So there's a lot to do. It's not only just to go on a normal car and put 85 on it and it works. So that's the thing, you know. To me, on a standard engine, it doesn't really worth doing. You might experience a gain of like 3 to 5%, which is not a lot, and you will feel it, but it's not really wow. It's not like night and day. So that's the thing. We go to end up the video. So I'm going to end the video in here. As I said, I'm going to try to see what I find that is interesting to talk about on another video. I want to do a video talking a bit about the other things we do, like products we offer and what base they have in offer, and so you guys see what is behind the product, what it supports. I think it would be important to do a video on that content at some point. it's also important to mention our products. Like all this science that I've been showing to you guys, it's actually put into real world and tested. AFR would be interesting, like run rich versus lean, ups and downs. I've done that, and the difference is very small. And I talked about it before on another video about the AFRs and the differences it make. After reading someone that have said that after making the car richer on mid-range, he saw a gain, and this is on a small engine, not small, but not that big, on a 2.8, saying that he could gain from going from 14 to 13 AFR, he gained 20 foot-pounds of torque, which is absolutely bullcrap. An engine makes peak torque at a lean stage, not lean still rich, because lean is only when it's over the 14.7 AFR. So it does the best torque at around the 14 and the best power around 13.5. 13.5. This is the way it actually works. There's some science article that I read a few years ago that said this was done on a university on the States, where they tested the same engine, going from 10 of air fuel ratio all the way up to 15, and it shows they overlay the graphs, and you can see what the engine has done with the fuel. So that's the thing. I don't like to run the cars rich at all, because it's just they don't make as good power. They're not as responsive. I like to run them on the leaner side. It's a bit riskier, but it's where they feel their best. If the fuel is right, they shouldn't go wrong. So that's the thing. Anyway, guys, thank you very much. Let's share these videos. Today we didn't have many watchers. It's going backwards at the moment. I would like to increase the number of watchers we have on the channel. I'm trying to get my website up and running for a while, but my time has been very, very tight at the moment because I'm going to put some nice, interesting written subjects in there for you guys to read as well. Well, I hope you're having a good week so far. My one at BDS, it's going a bit messy, not messy on a bad way. It's just very complicated when we have massive delays on parts delivery and not being able to finish anything without getting something stopping us. There's always something that is not there when it should be. It's really driving me absolutely insane. This is why I'm very tired, because I have a lot to deal with at the moment. And I think it's starting to take a bit of a toll. I need some holidays, but there's lockdown. So, well, it's what it is. Guys, thank you very much for staying there. I hope you enjoyed this video as well. It was areas that I wanted to clear. The dyno is the second time I really speak about this. But it's I was late. More viewers will come for sure. Well, but it's now an hour gone. We want to have, as I said, in the future. I know it takes its time. I wanted to see if I reach the 300 subscribers this week, which is not far. It's starting from scratch. So it's one of those. I just had a message. Sorry, guys. So anyway, looking forward for video live about your photos. Products. Okay. I'm going to do that. I'm going to try to arrange a nice setup, and I would like to do the. Oh, your lack of mustache is putting cells away. Oh well, it puts me straight in at home, so that's fine. Guys, thank you very much. I'll see you next one. Please share this video. Do share. Everyone share this video. Let's get people on board. Okay. Thank you very much. I'll see you on Saturday. Bye-bye.